to Yes, I Am the Veteran, hosted by Brandy Pet.
Welcome, everybody. I'm glad to see that everybody's doing okay. Hopefully, everybody did not become the reason for the safety brief over New Year's weekend. How are you doing, Stephen?
Doing all right.
So we've got with us tonight, we've got Stephen Russell from Dahlia. Sorry, my dog says hi as well. From Tales of Nihilism. But I know the last time we did see you was during the Plastic City Comic Con or just before. How'd that go?
That went amazing. We almost sold out our comic stock that we had that day. We sold some merch, and made some good connections, got some viewership out of that. And, it was a nice little boost to our ego and showed like, hey, this is something that we can actually start doing.
Nice. And so for those who maybe don't know who you are, did you want to maybe reintroduce yourself? Because I know it's been a little while since you've been on with us last time.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm a 10-year Army veteran, Army Infantry Airborne, and I deployed to Iraq 2006 to 2007, one of those infamous long, 15-month deployments during the surge. And during that time, we lost a lot of guys, and it was pretty intense fighting on that. But I got out and then re-entered back, through the military. And that's where I got airborne qualified and tried to go back, special forces, got my 19-day non-select, all that fun stuff. But, still, I still made it my 19 days. I just didn't get selected. All right.
You had your chance.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was actually just trying to explain to a civilian, like, the difference between taking a jump class as a civilian and being, like, jump qualified in the military. And he, like, wasn't getting it. And he had, like, this, like, airborne, like, wings on him. Like, bro, like, you would get beat any installation that I could take you to. Like, you're going to have to cover that. Like, yeah. I can't, like, vouch for your safety.
Yeah. It's actually it's in my book that's going to be coming out this March. That's going to be published nice. About my deployment. Stupid E1 private Russell, in the military going to Korea. My first my first unit was a LRSD unit, and that's like Rangers, Special Forces, Airborne guys. And they're sitting there telling us, in the in-brief room when you go into Korea, like, hey, make sure to go to the clothing sales and get all your like unit patches and, try to have everything get squared away because things are hard, clothing and sales wise to come in through Korea, in places like that, Italy, Korea, it's harder to get stuff, right? I was like, oh, okay. And then they were like, oh, this LRSD unit is an airborne unit. So you need to make sure to have, your jump boots, your maroon beret and all this. And I wasn't airborne qualified. So I just listened to them and I went and I got those. And I'm wearing them the day that they picked us up. Oh, man, they made me sweat so bad for that.
They set you up for failure.
Yeah.
How many push-ups did you have to do that week?
It's all of them, every last one.
all of them. It reminds me, like, so I actually, like, I'm a huge Rammstein fan, and my sister thought, like, I had a thing for Vin Diesel, so she sent me, like, a letter with, like, all these Vin Diesel stickers stuck out. I don't even know where she found all of them. But, like, I remember doing so many push-ups, and I'm like, I like Rammstein. Like, it's not what I'm doing. Like, one of the guys made the mistake on our brother flight saying, "Aw," and so like no one would fess up, so we literally had to push until like oblivion, basically. Yeah. Saved my ass when I was a sergeant getting around my PT test because I was never like that fast. But I was like in the pre-Kim Kardashian booty loving era, not booty loving era. There you go. Yeah, like, and I always tried explaining this to people that a lot of times uniforms can create like the SpongeBob effect or the pigeon effect on females, like because of the fact that you have boobs and a booty, like if you pull it down real hard, like you look like a sponge. And SpongeBob never got laid, never. And he also had like the pigeon effect. If you had a booty and like your blouse would kind of like bunch in the back, and then you'd always have like that, like wing thing happening with your hair because like you couldn't have anything down. Like, but I'd always break that rule anyway. But yep, definitely a challenge. So I mean, I love that actual name of your comic, the Tales of Nihilism, because of the fact that I very much understand that being a long-standing member of the E4 Mafia.
Oh yeah.
Amen. But what was like your most memorable moment in the E4 Mafia that kind of like you maybe like translated into your comic, or did any of your stories kind of make it? I know for me, the ambulance driving through a house with no one in it, that would have definitely been an issue for me. But that's just me. I'm weird.
I really came into the E4 Mafia in Iraq. So over there, you definitely had a lot more leeway, especially, during the surge, what you could do, what you could get away with, and, just what level of like chicanery you can get into.
Right.
And I was a bad kid. I hit E1 to E4 twice. I got 2 field grade Article 15s. And, it was just like, so I was always, into some sort of like, deal. Right. And once I got over to Iraq, all of a sudden it's like that type of mentality though, that really like took you through, it's like, okay, you're willing to do whatever it is you need to do. And as far as like rank, promotion, career, things like that, like that's not important. What's important is what you have to do and like how to make it happen. Yep. And so, yeah, I would go to the motor pool all the time and like start talking to NCOs, start talking to people like, how can I get this? What can I do? What can we trade here? What can, I can go like get this out in sector for you and bring this back and, do
that
this.
Is a marketable skill.
Yeah. And, have those kind of like conversations, and then everybody already has this like respect of like, oh, this guy's already crazy. So, hey, just like work with him. Right.
Right. Like sometimes it's the crazy guys that get stuff done though. Like I was raised by the crazy son of an Irishman. And he had 11 kids. Yeah. So for me, like I'm used to kind of like MacGyvering it, like, but people assume as I look a certain way, I, don't do that stuff. But no, like I wasn't raised with money or means. Like you had to be slick about things. Mm-hmm. And it kind of translated into the Air Force because I was raised Army. So imagine being raised Army with that mentality, then going in the Air Force. Yeah. Imagine that didn't get me like loved universally, because that's entirely the case.
Yeah. But I think the worst was like when I got back to base and then realized like, oh, like none of this flies back in the Army, back in the real world at all. And I was a team leader at the time, and they issued me a private kid. He had just come into the unit. I'm trying to ETS, so I at the same time I'm checking out. And this kid kept losing his ID card like over and over and over again, and we're having to deal with that and search around and try to find stuff. And he was just messing up left and right, full on like anxiety and craziness from the new unit. And we just got back from a deployment. So everybody's like high strung and high tension, So I took this kid and I gave him a tree, like a potted plant tree from the PX. And I told this kid, I was like, this tree is now yours. You're going to take it. You're going to water this tree. You're going to take care of it. You're going to like be responsible for this tree. And you're going to carry this tree everywhere you go, all over base, everywhere. To the PX, to the chow, I don't care, everywhere. And when anyone asks you why you're carrying a tree, you tell them it's to give back the oxygen you stole today.
Ah, that's the most nice.
And then
you set that poor
lasted
kid up
about
for
2 days.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't give it a week. Nope.
Yeah.
What happened to it?
Yeah.
Did the tree end up in the chow hall, like getting launched or something?
I think he left it behind the quad out there in Fort Hood. It might still be there to this day.
It's like a sign on it, all official, and like you never acknowledge your progeny.
Yeah.
So at what point, like, did you go from being the NCO to really thinking about this comic and wanting to like make it into a reality? Because I know in the military, like when we couldn't draw or you do anything outside of what the normal regs are, you were like private joker, right? Like they kind of assumed that we're like the one to keep the eye on.
Yeah, I mean, I was always doodling and drawing stuff. I'd be the guy like drawing little doodles on the op orders and while they're giving out the commands and stuff like that. And then on our our vehicles out there in Iraq. I was like drawing a combat monkey on my gunner's shield and all this other
Nice.
stuff. And they're telling, like, as soon as the Sergeant Major sees it, he's like, take that shit down,
Yeah.
and all that. But, and, I've always been artistic, especially as a kid. And so it was after I got out where I kind of realized that piece of my life had been, pretty much like disconnected. And it was something that I wanted to reconnect with again. So I just like started doing, watching old Bob Ross videos and painting and
Roberts.
yeah, going through there and doing that. And then you find out Bob Ross was a Air Force, drill instructor and all this fun stuff. And
you just find it's actually a Bob Ross like rehabilitation center right next to the VA. That's right by my house. And so every time I have my ketamine infusion, I'm like, the Roberts, and the person's driving is like, what? I don't get it.
Yeah.
One day I want to wake up and like see like a bunch of birds just painted on the sign, just like different kinds of birds, like just mess with me. Just me though.
I always think of him, painting the happy little trees, and those are privates, and he's like, push to make the trees happy.
Right. That's why I'm like, I remember those were like important in like learning to draw like tutorials, even to this day, like actually how calm he is. Like you're like, I always wonder now, like knowing that, like, I bet he smoked his troops and like got him like that.
Yeah. He definitely would strike me as the more fearful, drill instructor. Because like we had that too. We had 3 drill sergeants, and you had your one who was just like high intensity, screaming, going nuts all the time. Yep. We had another one who would fill in, and he was kind of like in the middle. But the one who was like truly terrifying was this guy Drill Sergeant Burke, and he was just this like 6 foot tall black guy who played Navy football as a linebacker.
Oh, you're running.
And he never spoke a word ever, like never. You would come up to him and be like, Drill Sergeant Burke, we just came off the range. Where are we supposed to go? And he'd just like stare at you, and then you would like run off, and be hanging around in like a gaggle of privates, and all these drill sergeants would run out. What the fuck are you doing, private? And we're like, oh, Drill Sergeant Burke told us to be here. And they're like, you're all liars. Drill Sergeant Burke doesn't even speak to his mother.
No. Watch, he talks like Mike Tyson in real life. Like you've never met him, like at an event. You'd be like, like, what would you do if he like came up to you like his comic design, and then like you heard him speak? Like he'd be,
yeah. He told us congratulations on the day we finished, and he had like a super deep voice. It was crazy, like what's his face off of Pulp Fiction.
Oh, like Marcellus Wallace.
Yeah.
Nice. You sound like a gangster. You got to go all the way. Like you can't really half step on that one. But yeah, no, honestly, sometimes like your military self and the person that you become when you get out are very different, and I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
And you having like this sort of like, for me, I like to empower, I like to educate and inspire through this podcast. And I think what you're doing is so interesting. And I think a lot of times we as like service members ourselves, like we kind of trick ourselves into believing that there's only certain types of jobs that are like suitable for us or that we could do when we get out with our new found abilities or impingements, as I found. At the end of the day, to have, other options out there that, there are veterans that take the road less traveled, that do other things. I think that's so interesting and important to really hear about, especially in this day and age where people think that, outside of the military, you can do these jobs, and be considered successful. But there's a lot of different ways that you can be successful. And I think that's not something that's really discussed enough when we're in the military.
Absolutely. And I really think this is where my comics started, because I'm I guess a twice veteran, because I did my 4 years active duty, got out, and then went back in, and then got out at the 10-year mark, and both times, no matter what sort of job I've been doing, no matter what sort of training I've received, a degree, this and that, there's always been these like ridiculous hurdles to like become legitimate in whatever you're trying to do. And it seems like being a veteran is one of the key things that like works against you. in all of this. I got out in Iraq. I was an infantryman, and I'm in Texas, and I was like, well, I'll go use my GI Bill, I'll go to college, and I'll take a part-time armed security gig. Well, then you go up to, armed security company, and they say, well, you're not qualified to be an armed security guard. You don't have a concealed handgun license, you don't have a Texas, peace officer license, you don't have this, you don't have that. And you're like, I just finished being in a war zone with, I'm a saw gunner, a 240 gunner. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not qualified.
Yeah, I'm qualified to shoot things that you are not.
Well, I mean, not even, just that. You're like, shoot, man, I was over there pulling security. I had to, do target identification. I had to, sit here and assess every situation I'm in and make sure, that people are safe and that my actions, think about the second and third order effects of everything that I did, and how that affects, the people around you. And you're just like, okay, so I'm not qualified though. And then, you move on and you go into all these places and it's like this same story, and you're working like so hard to climb up these hills. And every time I would always hear the same words over and over again. It was like, I appreciate your service. Thank you so much, for what you did. And it's something that like no one can ever take away from you. And you're like, well, by saying that, you're trying to take it away from me. Like you're trying to remove, the authority and the convention behind what I've got. And it's a story that I've heard across, not just in combat arms. You hear it in all MOSs, you hear it in all, services and stuff like that. And it's like, unless your job in the military is sitting side by side with a civilian and you have to have a certification to do that job, like it's non-existent when you get out, and you don't get, the credit for that. I mean, shoot, even combat medics and PJs and stuff like that, they get out and they're just EMT basics.
Yep, I know. Ask me how I know.
Yeah.
Like literally, I've actually had to correct my instructors at school when I went to university about said things, like when they were actually trying to teach the courses. And I'm like, no, actually, this happens because I've seen it, because I did clinicals here, places you only could dream of. So just so you know that's not right.
Yeah.
I was not loved. Some of my classes, but I usually would go after like the self-entitled, like, king lords of the, quad, like it was more like the ones that needed to get cut down a peg. It's just like the NCO and me. I'm like, you know what? But
I did, civilian EMT for 3 years, and when I went through the, EMT basic course, everything in there was just a rehashing of all the, casualty combat care courses that I had in the military. I didn't even have to study. I was just like, I already know all of this, and those things, even though you do them, you don't get those sort of like certifications or education from it. And then on top of it, if you want to try to move into trades, well, then your GI Bill doesn't cover those things, or it covers very few. And so, and they keep telling you like it's almost the same as when I was trying to get out of high school. They're like, go to college, go to college, go to college. And then you're starting to get out of the military. Go to college, use your GI. Go to college, use your GI. And you're like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know, where I want to go. But this is what everyone's telling me. So then you go and you waste all that time. And those colleges have gotten really good at abusing your VA GI Bill and the benefits and things like that.
Right. And sadly, usually ran by veterans also, which is, I'm like, why? Like, you're helping me waste my money. Like, that's how things. Thanks.
Yeah. I remember because I was dual majoring in biology with EMT, and I would drop out of the EMT course. I would take those in the summer. So I would drop out of the biology, go into the EMT courses, and then for the fall and spring semesters, I'd go back into biology. And every time I would change programs to, keep my GI Bill not only running for the whole year, but also to get the EMT certifications, it was like, oh, well, even though this course in your EMT thing is the exact same thing that you just took in your biology course, you have to take it again. And it doesn't count this way. And if you were a state student on state student loans, it would count. But since you're VA, it doesn't.
Well, if DOT is a DOT, I don't get it. Like,
Yeah.
but I was an EMT instructor, but I learned it all through the Air Force, so I didn't do it like the civilian approach to EMS. I had 6 weeks when I was 18 to get my enter EMT, and you get 3 times to take it, and after the third time, they reclass you, and they usually put you in the worst jobs in the Air Force.
Oh, wow.
Ask my ex-husband how I found his job. He's probably like, I can't believe you. Yes, I said it. But at the end of the day, like for you, what made you push towards publishing your Tales of Nihilism as a comic? Like, what made you push to really have your dream realized?
Well, I mean, part of it is that this story and this struggle, and I feel like there's like this collective cultural struggle that we're all kind of going through, and we all have these kind of like feelings. You talk about what's normal today. It's so hard to buy a house. It's so hard to have a job and support yourself off your income, and with inflation and all these other crazy things, and you turn around and it seems like there's just another thing getting piled on the plate every single day. And it doesn't matter how hard you work, it doesn't matter how many hours you work, you're just always like in that deal. And for that outlet, I was like, well, I'm already doing art. What if I went back to, using my art to tell this story? And how would I want to do that? And I think a lot of it was, started to go back to like, you're thinking of your childhood, and you're like, okay, I used to read comics, and there's all these like amazing heroes, and everything seems to work out for them, and this is all great. Well, but that's not the reality. So let me take those stories and turn them on their heads. And that sort of, like developed this whole thing where it was like, let me tell a story about a guy, just a normal everyday man who lives in a world full of superheroes, and just how difficult that would actually be. And once you start taking it to that absurdity, you realize just like how insane the entire, premise is. And, it's things like, okay, you're trying to go to work, and then these superheroes are battling on the freeway. So now you're late to your job. Well, how many superhero battle excuses do you get before they fire you?
It's a legitimate question.
Yeah. And like, the Hulk comes in and crashes your car in a fight. Okay.
Is there insurance for that? I need to know that question.
Yeah. Not just that, your premiums just shot up,
Damn it, Hulk.
Yeah. And things like that. And you're just like, okay, yeah, this whole thing would just be a complete nightmare.
Kind of makes me think of like, a lot of times like when we're like E4 assessing for E5, and there's a big bottleneck of like people getting not promoted as they should. It's like, what would happen if like everyone got their promotion all at once? And then like, but you, and then you can sit back and watch basically like the whole social structure, like, crumbling on itself. So it kind of makes me kind of think about that. Like, what if everyone got what they wanted, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, I just like fully delved into the absurdity of it. And I think it was like me and my wife were playing like one of the Batman games, the Arkham Asylum.
Nice.
And I found myself like going around with Batman and just like pointing out OSHA violations throughout the game. And I'm like,
I would do that.
I'm like, no wonder everyone's a criminal in Gotham. Like, this place just is dysfunctional.
This isn't up to code.
I'm just like,
but honestly, thinking about stuff like that, it makes you really look at things a little differently, especially in the comic world or in the veteran world, right? Like, kind of putting things in like different, I guess, ways of frames of mind, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always been a card-carrying member of the Peanut Gallery,
Nice.
So it's, you're sitting there and your command comes up and tells you to do something stupid, and you're gonna make, jokes and rib about it and things like that. And I was like, I really want that spirit to come out in this kind of story and tell these kind of stories, because I think people are kind of like, fatigued with what we consider the mainstream or conventional tales and stuff like that, and they really want these things that speak to our current lived cultural experiences that we have.
Someone they can identify with. I think
Mhm.
just having that, and I think we were talking about that a little bit before we went live, but you know, what I love about your comics is that there's something that's identifiable, right? Like you can kind of see yourself in some of the characters, whereas other comics you may not necessarily, because you're like, I'm kind of salty or dead inside, you know. Like that's why I like Todd McFarlane's work as well for Spawn, because of the presence of the anti-hero, and he was one of the first that really was well known for promoting like his central characters as anti-heroes, which it was not done at that time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I'm a huge Alan Moore fan. I love, The Watchmen, V for Vendetta, things like that.
Definitely.
So I definitely have those kind of like inspirations going in there. I think where I kind of like diverge from them is I I don't really give the superhero world and like this sci-fi world credence. I don't give it the authority that they do. Like you're still in the Watchmen, the superheroes and everything, they're still superheroes. They still like, are trying to do this battle. They're still trying to play this game, and everyone's still, identifying as like, oh, we're the people either, cheering on the heroes, or we don't like them, or this and that. And my deal is to like take all of that away and just say like, no, like you shouldn't have the power that you have. This whole thing is absurd. And the ramifications of like some of these people's very existence would shatter the entire like cultural and societal world that we live in. You think of like if Wonder Woman existed, what what would that do to a world population that's what 65% Christian, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden a Greek goddess like shows up and exists?
You're like, what?
Yeah, like, and so it's like, okay, that's the kind of questions that I'm trying to pose in the comic.
And I think a lot of us as veterans, like we all want someone to cheer for, and especially like in comics or like in a movie or something they've seen, they're like, that's me. Like we all like
Yeah.
to try to find that, and I know especially in the veteran community, like it's more of a challenge because it's harder to find someone that you feel relates to you. So I think that's really definitely important. And how long have you been doing your comics now?
I think we're right at the 2-year mark now. So we've got 5 main issues. I'm working on 6 this month. I don't know if I'll be able to make the deadline, with all the the holidays and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
we're pushing, trying to make that. And then we tell short stories and we do comic strips as well. I think I've got 3 or 4 short stories up, and then like 12 comic strips and stuff like that.
And so for you, what was your biggest challenge that you found in creating your comics?
For me, the biggest challenge was going digital, taking I've always been a self-taught traditional artist, and pen, paper, charcoal, oil paint, acrylic, all that. And so taking that and then moving to a digital platform, and then teaching myself how to do vector art and digital line work and things like that, it was a huge leap to go that way. And there's like certain things that you can do traditionally that for digital maybe it doesn't play out the same way, and you have to figure those kind of problems out. And I think I posted up the original first issue like 2 or 3 times, because I kept just like changing things and going nuts, and I was just putting it up free on Facebook and just like saying, hey, this is what I'm working on. And yeah, it took quite a few, probably a year in the process before I like really got down like, this is how this works, and here's like these processes to make this thing work.
Nice. And I think that it's just really interesting to see, and it's a lot of work going into a comic. Like it can take months, even like just because my ex-husband, like it was something that I had worked on with him, and he was very inclined in an artistic way. I was the creative one, but he was the one that could draw. And so we had been working on something, and I mean, it just takes a lot even to do like a frame, to do a page. Like, people don't realize like how many small drawings inside of a bigger drawing, basically. And then plus you have to like format like the content with like the storyline. Like it's not easy as it looks. Like, I mean, when we're like 5 or 10, like it sounds like a badass job, but I mean, I would imagine it'd be pretty high stress.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think comic art is one of those things where it's not taken as seriously as it should be, because if you're doing like traditional sketch art or traditional paintings, normally you have a theme or a focus, and a lot of these traditional artists, they'll get on like one style of something, and then just do that over and over and over until they perfect it. Even people like Bob Ross, he did landscapes, but that's all he did was landscapes.
Do you think there were
And
bodies in his original landscapes?
yeah, that's the joke where that's where he's hidden all the bodies.
They're all birds.
But a comic artist, you have to be able to be ready to draw anything and everything, for your entire story. You have to be comfortable with the landscape scenery. You have to be comfortable, with the anatomy. Then you have to think about the style in the clothes and how that fits over your characters. Then maybe have animals in there. Then you have machines, cars, this, that. And then on top of it, now you're putting in like design perspectives. And then like, does this tell the story the way I want to tell the story? Or does this actually like make it harder for, people to read? And so then you're also being like a movie director here. And you're like, okay, I want this shot for this scene, and I want it to open this way and then do this. And part of the way that I was able to, get over that was to reach out into the indie community, and I found a writer to partner with, and that really helped, solidify and like start honing things and refining things. And it was like, yeah, I love the overall idea here. Let's refine this, and let's make this sharper here. And then, let's make some outlines and, do all these points and stuff like that. So really doing that teamwork deal, that's another great thing that I think we as veterans, we forget. You want to be that like lone survivor, like I'm doing it all by myself. But when you're also like forgetting that in the military we were complimented by working in teams. So
Right.
Yeah, it's like, hey, get out there.
Just because we got our DD-214 doesn't mean we're all supposed to be loners.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean he really helped, and that's a lot of what has been really pushing the limits on this publication.
So what would you say to any veterans out there that maybe you're kind of considering making a jump to something that are a little concerned? Like, what would you say to yourself maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago?
The definite thing is like, don't follow convention. Don't, if there's something that drives you, you really need to get into it and do it. And, like everybody else, I have a day job. I have things that, I do to support myself. But with those things, I'm not, like falsely putting my passion and my, experience into those places the way that, I did when I first got out of the military. And, you're always told to have like this work ethic and, do these kind of things. But if you focus all of that into your day job, then you're going to lose yourself in your passions and what you're good at. And, I just think like, hey man, if I would have gotten out of the military in 2008, the first time, and been like, screw it, I'm going to go to art school, or I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to go, follow this kind of thing. Yeah. You would have all that time where you were building that skill and doing those things. So don't be afraid of that. And don't, listen to what convention's going on.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And right now I think it's one of those times that a lot of people are considering a lot of different moves in a lot of different places, but sometimes it's helpful to see brothers and sisters that are maybe doing jobs that are not considered orthodox, or that maybe don't fit inside the box, but maybe it's okay to be outside the box. It's okay to
Yeah.
be different. And, you know, you're showing other veterans that, you know, you can do all kinds of things. And for you, you said you have a book coming out later in the year. Is that right?
Actually, yeah, this March. So I have my memoir. It's called "Troublemakers: The Greatest Dog and Pony Show in Iraq," and it's going
Nice.
to be coming out in March with Blue Ear Books. We don't have the pre-order up yet. We're doing all the finalization of everything in January, but by the end of January, we're going to be, opening it up for pre-orders. And it's all about, my 15-month deployment to Iraq. And, uh, a lot of it's dealing with the same kind of deal, like cultural thoughts towards the whole war and what that's done to us as a nation. And it's also from the perspective, of an E3, E4 guy in the military. It's not, like a lone survivor, like, hero book. It's like, hey, this is, this messed up part of our history. And I don't think a lot of people have like reflected or reconciled with a lot of things that happened during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's important to really just give the enlisted something to cheer about. Maybe just the enlisted didn't be thinking that. But a lot of times, like you're seeing a lot of these movies come out that they're pretty high up in rank, or like they're the base commander, or, you know, like some commando that's like the head of a SEAL team or something. And it's
Yeah.
like, yes, they're important. And what they did is absolutely, you know, worthwhile and speaking about. However, why don't we talk about some of the littler guys, some of the
Yeah.
ones with less of a voice, to really drive home the fact that, you know, you don't always have to be exactly identical to succeed.
Absolutely. And it's like, I lost 12 brothers on that deployment, and at least double that, were injured to the point that, they'll never be the same. And those people, like, they need their stories told.
Yeah.
They need people to hear about it. And it's, it's one of those where I think we're getting to a period in time where, people in the American society are a little bit more open to hearing about these kind of things, and they need to start hearing these stories.
Yeah, they do. And honestly, not just from people that are even from here, really. Like, I'm just thinking about that off the top of my head. But yeah, at the end of the day, like, you know, it's absolutely a worthwhile endeavor that you're doing. And I think that it's great that you're kind of getting more like the little guys' voices. Hopefully, like, you have at least one or two asshole supervisors that you base characters off of, but won't admit it to me for, you know, obvious litigation purposes. However, I know I sure as fuck would. Like, I would have like a Sergeant Shitbag and like a Sergeant Charlie Bravo because she's crazy as fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they would definitely be characters. Yeah.
Well,
Now I kind of want to create one.
I definitely, especially in the book, I don't pull punches, and
Nice.
especially
I know,
not on
I
my,
appreciate you.
but also especially not on myself. I'm highly critical of myself, and you can use the excuse of, hey, I was a 19-year-old kid, who went from 19 to 21 in Iraq, and I didn't understand what was going on in the world. I didn't understand, a lot of these crazy ideas and things like that. But at the same time, I try to maintain some sort of personal accountability for myself. And there's times where I'm like, hey, at this point in my life, I was a shitbag. I was just, not in a good place, and this is where it is, and this is my mentality at the time. And then you're also being ran by organizations that care more about outward appearance than the actual mission and things like that. And it's just it's something that people don't really think about. And then we're sitting here in American society and culture, and we talk to these people, and unless you've been there, you don't know that the face behind that other person, they've experienced all these crazy things.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like trying to see how high I can get eyebrows to go when I tell people about my stories. I'm like, if I can't get to the back of their head, I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, like, and then what happened? What really happened? Like, huh? But
Yeah.
now what I've found is I'm creating groups. Like whenever I do events now, people are starting to hear of some of my stories. Not meaning to, like, but I didn't realize now I pull crowds. Like I'm
There
like,
you go.
no, like I literally can't go anywhere. Like people are like, I want to hear your stories. Like and like there's like a whole group. Like I think we just had a vet fest and we like kind of like pulled away a large chunk of their audience for a while. I'm like, I'm sorry. But I think you doing that and putting those stories out there, you know, for other people to read that maybe aren't veterans, may give better understanding from people that maybe have never experienced military. Because I mean, we're talking about like the UCMJ and the E4 Mafia, and people are probably like confused as crap right now. But at the end of the day, like, you know, the UCMJ is what basically the governing body, what they used to, you know, hand us our asses when we mess up. And, you know, the E4 Mafia is what we all kind of allude to, the rank before you're a sergeant, and you're like legitimately given a license, even though you basically did the job anyways. But at the end of the day, like, you know, that's when most of your shenanigans happen because you know too much, but you don't have enough rank. So at the end of the day, like, it's important, like, to kind of want to quick, like, explain that. But at the, you know, for us though, it's nice to have that sense of understanding someone else sees us. But I think what you're doing is important to people that don't understand our culture too, because it's too often whitewashed and made to look perfect, and it's not a fair expectation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it even goes as far as, you know, that sentiment goes in the organization itself. You know, I tell a story in the book where, you know, we in our deployment, we were the first unit to go out and do combat outposts in Iraq. And we lived out in the country amongst the people in Iraq. And I went 4 months without taking a shower, without, you know, eating a hot meal, and no running water, no electricity, and just all kinds of crazy stuff going all the time. But you better be damn well sure that you shave your face every single day. Like,
The lucky part on you. Face and
you know,
hands.
yeah. You know, and that's part of why I put that title, was like, you know, the greatest dog and pony show, because that's what we referred to. It was like, this is just another dog and pony show, you know.
Yeah, on a global scale, you were not incorrect. That is possibly like the best book title I've heard of in a long time.
And I named it Troublemakers because that was our platoon nickname, because everyone in my platoon had at least one Article 15. So
nice.
You can already tell, like, the company I'm keeping.
Yeah, you definitely want to hang out with those guys. They know the system, man. They already learned, like, their NJP tells you.
Yeah.
And so, like, Article 15, for those of you guys that maybe you don't know, it's basically like whenever, well, some branches give them out a lot more frequently than others, but basically it's like you did something pretty naughty, or maybe did not, and someone took the rap for you. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, it's basically like before a court martial.
Most of the time, it's not like criminal what you do. Like my first Article 15 was I showed up late to a formation in Korea. You know, I went outside the pass limit and they called a formation and I wasn't available, so I got a failure to report. You know, on that.
My sister got one in Korea, but she got two in Korea if I'm correct. But Jesse, but
that was a part of my introduction to Korea. They tell you in the briefing.
You easily expect it.
They say, you know, everybody here who's in E5, and all the sergeants raise their hand, and they say, you want to leave Korea in E6, and they're like, yeah, of course, and they're like, I'll tell you the fastest way to leave Korea in E6 is to come here E7.
That's fair. Yeah, my sister, she got totally busted by the wing commander, or like the base commander, the post commander, I guess you'd say. She was drinking underage, and he literally carded her himself.
Yeah.
I was just like, ooh, like, and she was off base. I was like, it's like a double whammy.
Yeah.
But I mean, we give each other a hard time. I mean, like, it's more like a American Horror Story. Like, what'd you do? Because you want to hear the story, because the stories are always way more entertaining than like actual paperwork. Yeah. Like, I feel like they always should have like a third column of, like, you know, like the actual like person that was found to be guilty's like comments. You know, because I feel like that would make for an interesting read for a lot of people.
Yeah. And that, those are these positions where I'm like opening up, and I'm being very candid and honest with these experiences, and like, this is where I was, this is my headspace, this is how I reacted to these things. I was in such a bad spot when I got my second Article 15 right before we deployed to Iraq.
Oh man.
And I, we were out just doing stupid stuff, and we were on I-35 in Austin, Texas, and we were shooting airsoft rifles outside our car, being total knuckleheads, idiots. And one of them happened to like fly out and hit a guy in another car, and they called the cops on us. We got pulled over. They didn't press charges on us, but they were, get out of here. But it came up on the blotter report about 4 soldiers, doing stupid things out in Austin. And we eventually, they eventually found out it was us.
Oh, dang.
And I go into my Article 15 hearing, and the battalion commander's sitting there just reading me the riot act and telling me, what a piece of shit I am, and I'm a terrorist, and all this like crazy shit. And I was like, sir, he was like, do you have anything to say for yourself? And I was like, sir, if you think that I shot some guy across 4 lanes of interstate traffic going 80 miles an hour with an airsoft rifle on purpose and maliciously, you should make me your personal sniper. And he was just like immediately offended. He's like, 45, loss of pay, loss of rank.
My squad leader, got to deploy.
Yeah, my squad leader's jaw just goes on the ground, and he's just like, you fucking idiot.
I can't even laugh that hard though, because I was always like the person that was the airman that would say what everyone was thinking. I recently called some friends because I was writing my book myself. And I was just like, what was I like as an airman? They're like, you were the funniest fucking person to sit next to in any sort of staff meeting, because everyone would just wait for what the hell you were going to say to some bullshit we were handed. Yeah. Like, we knew with no question your ass was going to say something that we were all thinking, but we're all too afraid to say.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's accurate. But honestly, I love the fact that you're able to create this and empower so many other people that are reading this. I can't wait till your book comes out and for you to come back on and talk about that, and we can share that out as more as well. Is there any upcoming events that you have coming up? Any more Comic-Cons or any sort of signing events?
We're definitely going to go back to Plastic City this year in I believe it's in June, and once they get. It's kind of the beginning of the year, so we're waiting for all these things to open up with the registration and stuff like that. Yeah. But the big push that I'm doing this year is I'm getting sponsored by Oscar Mike Radio to go to Veteran Comic-Con in November, and it's going to be in San Francisco, California. And they ran it last year. A lot of independent veteran artists and people like that, and so this year I really want to attend that, and we're offering ad space in the publication, and I would love it if small business, veteran owned businesses partner with us on this, because this is a veteran centric event. It's for veteran independent artists, not just comic artists, but other styles as well. And this is a place where the veteran community can come together and say, hey, like, this is who we are, and we're just as legitimate, as, traditional conventions and things like that.
Honestly, I think that's great that you're doing that. Definitely can't wait to have you guys back on so you can kind of give us some updates. I'm kind of curious to see what kind of cover art you do for your book, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think I sent you the photo on that.
Did I get it? I don't know. So I've been a little bit behind. I just graduated college.
that is part of the book. I do the interior is going to feature chapter artwork done by me, and the front cover and the back cover is also art done by myself as well.
Yeah, I like the art that you do, because it kind of reminds me of what you would see when you're like downrange, or you have like that one person that's kind of talented in your group that's in the military, and you're kind of like, what are you doing over there, man? And then you're always like the guy that gets roped into doing all like the squadron patches or platoon stuff, and you're like, dang, like that's actually how a Marine Ink Master he he started tattooing. His very first tattoo was a barracks tattoo.
Mhm.
And he was supposed to be doing a cherry, but he didn't know when the girls have to take their bras off. So like it became a jalapeno pepper instead when she took her bra off. I was like, how'd you
Yeah.
find that out, brother? I was like, wait, I already know. I'm like, did you fix it later? Like when you got like well known? He goes, no. I'm like, wait, so it's just like existing out there, just like
Yeah.
a
Oh, yeah.
Masters chili pepper. What he's like, I should come back in. I'm like, wow, like it's been how many years? Like,
Absolutely. And then you're the go-to guy that you have to draw like all the smut everywhere, you go as well. And
Commander always knows is the guys too. Like
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I recognize that soldier's artwork.
Yeah.
It's a private Russell. You're like, how do you know it's me?
Yeah. Well, that's part of the book. We had in our cop after we fought for it and took over the building, we had one room that was completely bombed out. We had thrown grenades in there and flashbangs, and so all the walls were just like full of soot. And I walked in this room after we secured the compound, and while everybody else was just kind of like, it's another room, I was like, oh, this is going to be my Mona Lisa. Like this is my mural. And so I just started drawing crazy stuff on the walls. And of course, a lot of it was like not safe for work.
Oh, for sure. Like that makes it entertaining at that point. If I'm gonna get in trouble, I'm gonna go all the way with it.
And then people saw what I was doing, and we had this like little art collective going on in the cop. So everybody would go off their shift and draw something on the walls. And then eventually we had a really, really, really bad mural that we did on the wall on the back, and I won't spoil too much of it, but it was extremely racy.
Nice.
And it was CNN. They came out to our cop and they wanted to do some viewing. And Commander was showing them all the different, places.
I was gonna ask, I want to read this book.
he opened the door and saw what was on the wall and immediately closed it. And he was like, "This room is classified."
He's like, I'm lighting up all you fuckers when these guys are gone.
And then afterwards he came in, they had left, he came back in and he was just staring at everything on the wall, and his face, you could see like that's the moment like his faith in humanity just like left him.
He's like, I'm dropping my retirement orders. That's it.
And he just looked and he was just like, what? I don't even know, guys. Like, what the hell? What is wrong with all of you? And then I piped up and I'm like, do we get to keep the wall, sir? And he's just like, wow.
He's like, burn it down.
Well, we kept it.
Yeah, we had like an Air Force story like that, but not nearly as cool. And with cake and inappropriate stuff happened. We ended up getting lit up. I was like, I wasn't even here. I was on ambulance crew.
Yeah.
It was in our barracks. I was just like, man, first of all, I'm never here anyways. Second, I was on 24-hour ops. Like, why am I getting smoked right now? But that's not even fair.
Yeah.
Also, the fly line, the deconning a fucking crew chief, man. That's not even, man. But thank you again so much for coming on tonight. Before we do close up, is there anything that you want to talk about? I know I've been a little wilder than usual.
Yeah, you can find the digital comics on Global Comics, and we now have a link up where you can purchase physical publications, so physical issues of the comics. So if you want to have it in your hands and read it that way, that's a possibility. And if you are a veteran small business, reach out to talesofnihilism@gmail.com and talk to us about our ad program. We would love to, partner with you guys and, have you guys featured at Veteran Comic Con this year.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and post that up. So again, that's talesofnihilism@gmail.com. So if anybody is interested, definitely reach out, and that way they can be featured for Comic-Con, which I think is awesome. There, and they finally extended to the veteran sector. I think that it's always good to push yourself, especially after service. It definitely can help with that sense of purpose. I know myself, if someone would have told me when I was getting Aerovac that I'd be doing the job I am now, I probably would have not believed them. So
absolutely.
Definitely don't limit yourself, guys. And that's all from us tonight. And But again, it was awesome having you on again, Stephen, and we can't wait to see what you're up to next.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.